Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, my name is Oni and I'm a fourth year medical student in the US. For all my returning subscribers, hello y'all, how y'all doing? Thanks for sticking with your girl. It's been a minute. It's been a while since I actually made a sit down chit chat video. It's been vlogs for a while and it's been old vlogs. Literally since I started this channel, this is like one of the videos that has been requested for, but I haven't had the chance to do it. But hopefully a lot of the videos that are coming out right now would be geared towards a lot of y'all's requests, which I still get from time to time. So I'm really happy that I'm finally shooting this video and finally giving y'all this information. As you can see from the title of this video, I'm going to be talking today about the things that I wish I knew before uplifting myself from my home country to the US to come and study this medicine of a thing. The things that I wish I knew, the things that nobody told me, things I didn't even think to ask, all that good stuff. Okay, I'm gonna be talking about everything in this video, at least most of the things that I can remember, just so that for those who are trying to come into the US to study medicine, regardless of where you're coming from, like if you're coming from high school or secondary school, if you're coming from primary school even, obviously not primary school, a bachelor's degree or even a master's degree, whatever phase that you're in and you're considering coming to study medicine in the US, I shall be providing some of the information that I wish I knew before moving. So if it's something that interests you, definitely stick around and we'll get right into the video. Let's go. Okay guys, so I wrote down a couple things here and I'm gonna be really looking on my phone to make sure that I'm capturing everything. The first thing that I wish I knew is the length of training. It takes about 8 years, guys. 8 years at least. Heavy on the at least to get through medicine here. So I really want to highlight this, and I think this is like the most important thing, because if you're on this video, if you're watching this, you've probably done your research. You probably already know that it takes about 8 years, and if you don't, that's fine. Now you know. I think what people don't highlight is that that's like the minimal number of like years it takes. A lot of the time for most people here, it ends up being more than 8 years. Before you can start medical school here, you need to have completed your bachelor's degree. And getting the bachelor's degree is obviously about 4 years. So 4 years of college, 4 years of medicine, that gives us 8 years, right? But a lot of people, because it's very competitive getting into medical school and you need to actually apply to medical school just the same way you're applying to college, most times you end up having like a couple of gap years, right, in between college and medicine. And so sometimes people take like about a year to kind of like apply, you know, or 2 years or 3 years, whatever the case might be, to sort of like get their application requirements, you know, all set up, to write their MCAT, you know, to do maybe a master's degree to get them like more competitive for medical school. You know, there's a lot of stuff, depends on your story, your path, it's all different. But people end up doing like taking like a year to like 3, 4, 5, even 6 years, even more than that, before then applying into medical school. So it's something that I didn't realize. I moved into the US from high school straight. At the time, I knew that I wanted to do medicine. And so I was kind of weighing my options, right? This was me in Nigeria, because I'm Nigerian, guys, if I forgot to mention that. 100% Nigeria, okay? I, you know, started weighing my options. I was looking at where I could probably possibly do medicine. Schools in the US, schools in the UK. I was also looking at schools in Nigeria as well. And for Nigeria, like the process is to get into medicine is about 6 years. If you're not in North America, it's most likely 6 years for medicine. And with that process, you just apply straight from high school to a medical school. So the medical school is like your like that's your like bachelor's degree. You're trying to get the MBBS, that's what it's called, but it's your degree. Once you apply into medical school at the end of 6 years, that's the degree that you get, and you can start like training, you know, as a doctor. So it's about 6 years for that process. And I remember kind of weighing my options. I'm thinking, well, in Nigeria it's about 6 years. If you count in all the strikes, if we're counting in the strikes, it might end up taking like 8 years, maybe even more than that. We never know. So that was like something that I had weighing in my head, like, okay, cool, it's 6 years, but you could definitely, it's at least 6 years, it could end up being more. And then I thought about UK schools as well. In the UK, it's also about 6 years. But I do remember having to do like A-levels. And A-levels, especially if you're coming straight from high school, A-levels is usually like a year to 2 years as well. And you have to complete those A-levels before you then get into medical school. So I'm thinking, all right, cool. So we're thinking 7 to 8 years in the UK, right? Cool. Now I'm thinking the US and it says 8 years. I didn't see anything else so but 8 years. I saw 8 years. That's it. It did not click in my head that actually it's 4 years of undergrad and then 4 years of med school to which you have to apply, to which you're not guaranteed a spot. So that did not click in my head because I just saw 8 years and I was like, okay, cool. So everything ends up being about 8 years. So there's no reason to weigh one country over the other. So that was my thought process, and that was kind of what pushed me to applying to schools like in the US and Canada. Of course, medicine here is like huge, and there's a whole, thing for medicine looking outside in. So that was sort of the whole thought process, right? I thought that I would just need to apply to one school. By the time I applied to one school, and one school only, I will be able to complete my undergrad and like medical career, but that's not the case. And so I'm just trying to highlight these things so you understand. So it's 4 years of undergrad, and then you have to apply to medical school. And that whole application to medical school is a process on its own. Like, there's a lot of requirements the schools need. School is very competitive, even for its citizens. You need to have stellar stats. You need to have a really high GPA. You need to take your MCAT. Feel free to check out my videos about the MCAT, but I'm pretty sure you've probably heard about the MCAT. And you could have everything done and still not get into medical school because you're an international student, and it's very competitive for international students. International students have like maybe 40 to 50 to 60 schools that will look at their application and might consider them and then accept them. And that's in comparison to like over 200 medical schools in the country. So you really need to understand, like, a lot of your classmates who are not international students will be applying into medical schools with the same statistics that you have and end up getting into a lot more schools because they have like 200 plus medical schools to explore, to apply to, whereas you only have about 40 to 50 to 60 that would look at your application. The rest of the medical schools don't even, like, once they see that you're international and you'll be needing like a visa or whatever, they don't even look at your application. Your application gets thrown straight into the garbage. Like, nobody's looking at your application. So it doesn't matter how good you are. It doesn't matter if you as an applicant is better than everybody else that they're getting applications from. Just being an international immediately disqualifies you. Is that a word? So that makes it even much more competitive for international students. And so again, I'm just highlighting this because I wish this was something that I knew. I thought I would just get in and be done, but no, you finish your 4 years, which is a whole battle on its own. Because y'all, those 4 years you're hustling, bustling, all of that. You're trying to get a good GPA. You're trying to like stay afloat. So if you're coming from a country like I was coming from Nigeria. Nigeria was like 75 and above. I think in the UK was like 75 and above as well. In the US is 90, fam. And if you happen to get B's, your GPA tanks. And I'm not joking. Like, I swear I'm not even being ridiculous. Like, if you were to have mostly B's on your transcript, your GPA would not be looking great. Your GPA will be sitting between 3.2 and 3.5. But the average of people who get into medical schools GPA is about 3.7. Okay, so you need A's. And as an international student, the average is a 3.9. So when I tell you, you need A's, you need A's. You can't be getting anything less than 90 in your classes, in any class. So I'm just trying to highlight how competitive the whole process is for an international student. And I wish this was something that I knew, okay? Just so that I have that in perspective. I kind of understand the fire I'm about to enter before entering. So I'm just kind of putting that information out there. I was able to do it. I'm not the smartest in the room. I know people who were able to do it that were not the smartest in the room. It's still possible, but it's very difficult. Aside from knowing that it's 4 years of undergrad and 4 years of medical school, I think it's also important to note that after you're done with that, you still need to do residency. And residency can go from 2 years to 8 years, depending on what specialty you want to do. Residency is like a training process. So you've graduated medical school, which is kind of like the process I'm in right now. I'll be graduating soon, and the next step is to then do residency, which is where I'm getting trained as a doctor. So I am getting paid, I am working, but I'm not like a fully licensed doctor. I can't just walk into a room and just decide to treat anybody because I don't really have any license to my name, and you need your licenses to practice. So I'm not like an actually fully trained doctor. I'm still like a doctor in training. And so you finish the residency, and after residency, some people then elect to do a fellowship. So say for example, and again, I'm just kind of putting out all this information out here, okay? I know it's a lot. Bear with me, just so you know what you're signing yourself up for. So after the training process, then you could do a fellowship. Fellowship is like a post-training process, okay? And with fellowship, I'm gonna give you an example. So somebody who's trying to be a cardiologist, the process for you after medical school is that you apply into a residency program, and the residency program you have to apply to is internal medicine. That's about 3 years. That's how long that residency is. And then you have to do a fellowship. And so the fellowship is an extra 3 years for cardiology. So if you're trying to be a cardiologist, you need about 6 years. This is after medical school, okay? So you need about 6 years. And by the time you're done with your 3 years of fellowship, because that fellowship then trains you to be a cardiologist. The first 3 years you did is just internal medicine. You're just learning everything about medicine in general. Your heart issues, lung issues, GI issues, just like stomach issues, like anything that comes into the hospital, you kind of like are able to sort of, treat that patient. And then you specialize in cardiology in the next 3 years. So after that, you can then be a cardiologist. But some people take it a step further and still end up doing an extra fellowship, okay? Somebody said something to me. I was like, wait, what? This is something that exists? What is it called? Super fellowship. I think it's what it's called, super fellowship. A super fellowship, and I guess those could take like a year to 2 years or whatever. And let's say you wanted to, make your cardiology a little bit more subspecialized, then you could do a super fellowship from the extra 2 years. So depending on whatever the case might be. But after the 8 years at least, you still have another extra 6 years of residency before you can then be like, okay, I'm a cardiologist. I can walk into a room, I can treat patients, I can get a job, like a full, like actual doctor job, okay? And now that process is different depending on what you want to do. If you want to go into surgery, the residency is different. If you want to do neurosurgery, it's 5 years general surgery, 3 years for the neurosurgery part of it. So it ends up being 8 years. There's a lot of paths. And I don't even know everything because there's so much you could do. But most times you figure that out in medical school. So nobody really talks about all that stuff. And so usually you don't even know what the process is like. But I just want to kind of put that information here so you know that after medicine, residency, fellowship, all this training, it's a lot of training. You are getting paid, but you're getting paid chicken change. Like when I tell you, you are getting paid chicken change, I mean it. And you're in training for that long. So it's an extra 8 years before you even start like really making money as like an attending. So yeah. That's just to explain the whole length of training. That was like a quick run through. I know that was super long, but that was like an important part that I don't think I understood or I even knew of prior to starting medicine. Okay, before we start number 2, I just want to mention certain caveats to what I had already said, just so you're aware. So there are programs that offer like an accelerated BA, MD route, in which case you're not doing medical school for 8 years. You might not necessarily have to take the MCAT. So what happens is it takes about 6 to 7 years to complete. So it's only like 1 or 2 years less. You don't have to do the 4 years of college. You do about 2 years of college. Like you do your first 2 years. All the things that you need to do in those 4 years, you're doing it in 2 years. So it ends up being 6 years for you. Now, obviously this is extremely competitive because if it takes 4 years and you know how I said some people still need that extra time, like the extra gap years and stuff like that to be able to be competitive to get into medical school. You can imagine how hard it is to do it in 2 years. But they do cut you some slack because they know you're doing it in 2 years. You're part of the accelerated program, but everything is all like sped up for you. Some programs do it in 7 years as well. So it really is very dependent on the program. And also some of those schools may or may not open that pathway to international students. So I don't know how many of those programs are actually open to international students, to be very honest with you. That's something that if you're interested in, definitely check in with your school. I think a lot of the programs that offer that are programs that are already like top 30 medical programs. I'm talking Ivy Leagues, I'm talking like the really competitive ones already. I'm very sure like it's a path that most people can do. It's just that usually people are not aware of it. And the reason I know this is it's because it's something that my college offered, and I didn't know about it until I had a classmate. Like this one time, one of my classmates was so excited that they got into the accelerated program, and I was like, what is the accelerated program? I wish I knew about this, then I'd save myself the whole MCAT's writing process, to be honest, because I think some of those programs don't even need you writing the MCAT. You can definitely look into that. Some other programs will kind of speed up the MD process for you, so you don't have to do medical school for 4 years. You can end up doing for like 3 years. So one of the things that I will advise to do, and I'm so glad that I did, is to choose your pre-medical college wisely. Like wherever you decide to do pre-med, and pre-med is we usually call it pre-med, that's the first 4 years of college. Make sure that it has a pretty good pre-medical community in there, and a good pre-medical community that will support you as an international student. That's like the biggest advice I can give, because prior to coming, like I said, I didn't know any of these things. I didn't know that I had to do all of this extra things, but I started getting all this information from day one as a pre-medical student. Like I got in and we started having like conversations about it. A lot of my friends were pre-meds, a lot of my classmates were pre-meds when we started. So we all knew what was meant, like what we were supposed to do to stay and be competitive. We're definitely exposed, and it was just left for us to take the information and do what we wanted to do with it. So I will be sharing a video for those who are interested in medicine on how to choose your pre-medical college. So definitely subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on that video. Subscribe, I'm gonna wait for y'all. Also, as you subscribe, you just like, if you got to this stage, kindly like the video, please. Like the video for me. Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you. The third thing that I wish I knew, and probably a huge one, but I think y'all already know, is how expensive the process is, y'all. It's so expensive. And I remember having this conversation like after high school when I was considering medicine. I thought all I had to pay for was the undergrad. I thought I would only have to pay the 4 years of undergrad, and then moving forward in medical school, the price will like decrease or something. I don't know who gave me that thought. I don't know where I pulled that thought from. I definitely clearly did not do my research, because if I did my research, it's everywhere that medical school is extremely expensive. And usually you don't get as much funding in medical school as you would get in, or as you see in undergrad. Only very few schools give scholarship. And this I'm talking about like for citizens. So when it comes to international students, for you to get a scholarship, like you're pulling teeth, man, it's extremely hard to find any sort of funding. So getting into the medical school, first of all, is the biggest thing, right? And after you cross that hurdle, the next hurdle to cross really is how you're going to fund it. So that's definitely something to put into consideration. Funding the undergrad is actually relatively easier, much easier than funding the medical school process. But I have shared a couple videos on how you could fund your medical school degree if you're coming here. You can definitely check that video, and a lot of things I said on that video still holds true, so definitely check it out. And so the last thing I'll mention is when it comes to medical school, the curriculum is really interesting. So for the first 2 years, especially if you're in the US or Canada, the first 2 years you are pretty much doing a lot of preclinicals, and I will be sharing like a more detailed video about like the medical school curriculum, but you end up learning almost everything that you need to know in your first 2 years, and then the last 2 years is mostly like you working in the hospital and getting exposure in like the medical space. And then that's kind of like the second and the third year, and then the fourth year is pretty much you just doing more electives and then applying into residency, which then starts up a whole new pathway and journey for you. Okay, so basically, if you really think about it, you are here for 8 years doing medicine, but out of the 8 years, you only learn medicine in 2 to 3 years. That's actually insane if you think about it. But obviously medicine is always a learning process. So when you get through residency, you're constantly learning as you're meeting patients. Your doctors are constantly learning. You know, medicine is like a never-ending learning process. There's always something new coming up. COVID came up recently, and that was a huge learning curve, and still a learning process for a lot of people. There's always new things coming up. There's always new diseases. There's always new findings. There's always new medications. There's always something new to learn. So it's a never-ending learning process. But the major, like the core, all the things that have already been known, have already been discovered, like the things that have been going on for time, you do learn between actually mostly in 2 years, but like I would just add in the third year for good measure. So yeah, that pretty much sums up everything that I wish I knew before moving into the US for medicine. In the meantime, definitely check out all my videos. I have an international student forum here. It's my little playlist where I share a lot of videos for you guys, so definitely check those out. Hope you like them. Don't forget to like the video, y'all. Hit the like button for me. Subscribe to the channel. I'm so happy to be back, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Stay safe and stay sexy, y'all. I actually just got out of an interview and I wore this and I had my like little blazer on. The interview went so well. Like it really got me reminiscing about like my medical school application process and stuff that I wish I knew when I was applying to medicine. And I was like, wait, I've been meaning to make that video for a long time for you guys, but I actually never got to doing it. So I'm like, you know what? Let me just touch up this makeup a little bit and talk to you guys a little bit about stuff that I wish I knew prior to applying to medical school. I've been trying to not do makeup for my interviews anymore because I'm getting tired of it. But this interview today was like a school that I'm really interested in, or a program that I'm really interested in. It might be my number one right now. So I was like, let me just come and look a little cute, you know, so that they like me a little bit. But I have another interview that I'm very interested in, another program that I'm very interested in tonight. So I have to log on for that. So hopefully we get through this video very quickly.